when Radio Shack was still around, it was the place that you could go to get gadgets that you just didn't see anywhere else. And I have an old classic gadget that is mostly forgotten about. Check this out. So this is the Vox Clock 2 that was sold by Radio Scrap, Mike Ronta. This is back when Radio Scrap was Radio Scrap. I put this thing in operation probably 30 years ago, I guess. It was hooked into my repeater controller. I had a 440 ham repeater set up, and we had it so that it would announce the time every hour. It would when the controller went off, it would ID, and then this would announce the time. It would actually announce the time when anybody hit a specific key on their DTMF mic. I think it was star, and it would announce the time. And when the IDer went off, it would announce the time. That's what these wires were. Just been tacked in here. This thing hasn't been used in so long. I don't even know if this thing works anymore. But I figured since the repeater has been out of commission for forever, I took it down like 20 odd years ago. This thing just been sitting in a box, and I was going through some of my old stuff up in my storage unit, and I came across this thing. So I figured, let's just take it apart and we'll see what's in here. And I'm going to remove these wires, which basically just went to the I think one went to the speaker. Yeah, one went to the speaker, and one of them would have gone to ground, and I think one of them went to the button on the front here just to trigger it. So I figure we'll take this thing apart. We'll take a look at what's inside this thing, and I'll restore it back to its normal function as a talking clock. Normally you just push the button, right, and it would announce the time, which is kind of cool, right? Have it sitting on your desk and you press it. And this one here, most of these talking clocks had a very robotic sounding voice, but this one here actually had a proper digitally recorded voice on the chips down here, which we can see. What I'll do is I'll pull the board out of this thing if I can, so you guys can see it. Maybe I won't need to. If I can just get down here and take these wires out. I just have to take out the ground wire. There's a ground wire, audio out, and this one here was, I believe this one was trigger. Yeah, there's two wires here. This one was trigger, that was ground, and that one was speaker. So I'm just going to unsolder these wires, and we'll see if this thing works. There's one wire off. Put the speaker back in. As you can see, it was just paralleled on the switch here to activate the push button switch. These are just standard carbon pad switches, like most remote controls use. And the last wire was the the ground wire, which is just tacked down here to the ground. I probably can just cut that one off. Or just unsolder it. Okay, that hopefully will make this work. We'll take a look down the top of this thing here. As you can see, it's got a couple of ICs in here that are just basically blobs of epoxy. This is a custom design, and they certainly don't want people knowing what it is. So they've designed their own custom ASIC. You can get their little quality control sticker that they stuck on it. But that's the basic unit there. It looks like there's 3 ICs on here. One of these is going to be the audio amplifier, probably that one, because here's where the speakers attach. And one of these will be the clock, and one of them has probably got the speech synthesizer on it, which I think in this case was actually recordings. But let's just put this thing together, and we'll load a couple batteries. The neat thing about this one is it actually has a display on it. Some of these talking clocks, and I mean, I've heard some that sound horrible, but if this one's working, the sound quality off this one's actually quite good. So let's load some batteries in this thing and see if it works. So it just takes 2 AA batteries. That's a good sign. Something tells me that something is going to work on this. So let's set the time. So we can pick
24-hour setting.
Or 12-hour setting.
12-hour setting.
You can hear the sound is actually pretty good on this thing. So if I set the time,
hours 1, 3, 8 a.m.
It will read.
9 a.m.
It will read the time, or you can just
5, 7 p.m. minute 5, 9, 12, 14, 16 minute.
And that's it. It's now set. And we have an announcement. Announcement off. That's how you know if it's on. Alarm.
Alarms on. It's 12 o'clock a.m. Alarms off. It's 12 o'clock a.m.
If you want to set the alarm.
Alarms. It's 12 o'clock a.m. Hour setting 7 p.m. Alarms. Hour setting 12 1 a.m.
You hold the
3, 5, 7.
So if I set it for say
1, 3, 5, 7 p.m.
If I set it for say 7:18.
9, 11, 4, 56, 7, 18 minute. Alarms on. It's 7:18. Alarm minute setting. Alarm minute setting. 17 minute. 8:19 minute.
So now it's set for 7:19. I think.
Alarms.
No.
Alarms. It's 7:18 p.m. Alarms. It's 7:18 p.m. Minute setting. 18 minute. Alarms. It's minute setting. Alarms. It's 7:18 p.m. Alarms off. It's 7:18 p.m. Alarms. It's 7:18 p.m. Minute setting. 18 minute. 19 minute. 20 minute.
There we go. And then I turn the alarm on.
Alarms on. It's 7:20 p.m.
Now when it gets to 7:20, the alarm will go. Of course, to hear the time, you just...
It's 7:19 p.m.
There we go.
Alarms. It's 7:20 p.m. Alarms. It's 7:20 p.m. Alarms. It's 7:20 p.m.
And then you press the button to shut it off. I think that was actually snooze. And then to turn it off and on, you just press the
Alarm
button.
off. It's 7:20.
Now the time isn't right because it's 7:18. I was playing around with it here, but that's the little Vox Clock 2 that was sold by Radio Scrap probably, I think this goes back to about the 1980s. And Vox Clock 2 is because they had one prior to this, which had a Chinese girl's voice. They went back and they redesigned it and came out with this one. And I think you'll agree.
It's 7:20 p.m.
That they had a huge improvement in the sound of the voice for this particular unit. For what it's worth, it's just a little cube, kind of cool. This is was developed more for the visually impaired, and someone who's blind, for example, and doesn't have their braille watch. They could just.
It's 7:21 p.m.
But for what we used it for, we used it on a radio repeater, and it would announce every hour. It would announce the time, and we had a controller. Actually, I think it was announcing about every 10 minutes, because the controller, when it ID'd, at the end of the ID, it would close the switch.
It's 7:21 p.m.
And would announce the time. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.